Okay, we're live. Welcome to Telling the Show, episode 2.7. We're a different kind of podcast because we're trying to learn and grow from both people coming into screenwriting as well as people that are working very hard and active professionals in the field, and all the kind of variations of different kinds of folks trying to make entertainment in between. Because it's very much like screenwriting is like life to people. And I'm sorry, I'm going to wax Prince for a second here. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to get through this thing called screenplays, electric word screenplays that last forever. And that's a mighty long time. But I'm here to tell you there's something else: the paycheck. Yeah. My sense of humor is running amok, and on that basis, I'm going to try to go for concision, and because our listeners might notice Denise Zeiler, my co-host and partner in crime, whom without the show and its opportunity, I would not be here to talk to you, is not with us due to a schedule conflict tonight, but she is with us here in spirit. I'm going to ask some questions on her behalf, and I'm hoping that we do her justice and make her proud tonight. So on this episode, we're going to be talking about how to convey messages within your storytelling. And we're going to be talking with award-winning screenwriter, television writer, Jaye, and I'm sorry, I'm going to probably butcher your last name. Is it Blohm or Bloom?
It's Blohm. So Blohm is actually probably the more correct pronunciation, but I've grown up with Blohm.
Blohm it is, and I apologize profusely for doing that.
Oh, is this a mild hacking?
Yeah, maybe I'm just a hack. That's the best. That's probably just the truth of it. So our theme on this episode is stories that have a message, and let's talk about screenplays. So Jaye, your specialty is writing stories that have a message. So as every screenwriter has a different process, I'm sure yours is different, but what is your process since you're incorporating a message? And does your structure, do you structure your story around the message or vice versa? How do you approach that?
I think the message just kind of reveals itself. I don't necessarily intend to have a message. I will tend to just write the movie that I want to see. But then the more I explore timely events, it kind of develops into a deeper meaning. I think when I'm striving for, to add depth to my characters, the message just kind of starts to come out and the story will go along that path.
Roger that. So it's sort of embedded in the DNA as you're developing just from the more basic of the craft of writing the script.
Right. So it's not so much, what message am I going to put on the page today? It's more, what story am I going to tell? And then as it develops on the page, then it starts going deeper. And then, the subtext starts presenting itself. I don't want to say that, it happens, on its own and I just happen to find it. But, that's just the way it kind of unfolds for me is as I don't start out thinking, that what's the message behind this story. I just want to create a good story, and there just kind of seems to be messages underneath it. I think that's just my own subtext of kind of being an advocate type of person.
Okay, I was just about to ask, and not to sound too much like a therapist, is like, where do you think that message comes from? And you said that it comes from being, I'm sorry, an activist. Did I have that right?
No, an advocate type of
Advocate. Sorry.
person. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get like too philosophical, but I recently found out, and it makes a lot of sense, that I took a personality test, and I am an INFJ.
Oh, yes.
If that makes any sense to you, but the description that it gave was actually advocate, and it was just it was talking about how, like this type of personality might have a lot of empathy for people and might want to bring people together for a common understanding. And it just kind of makes sense, like, oh, I guess that's why I write the way I write, because it's just kind of ingrained in who I am as a person.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment because, if anything, well, the I in your 4-digit code there says you're an
Mhm.
introvert, which is common among screenwriters, but I still think it takes all types. But um, we're in a world now where we kind of need some, pretty positive messaging out there for one, and bringing people
Mhm.
together. I love that idea, because if there's one thing that we're not seeing a lot of in a lot of the messaging that and information transfers that we see in communication in the world right now is balance. There isn't really, I don't even think I see that word in anything that I've seen on any news affiliate website, with the exception of maybe a rare few. But even
Mhm.
then, it gets disturbing, you know, in general, around, when you look at the world and how things are very, very difficult. And it's always been difficult for entertainers in one way or another, especially screenwriters.
Mhm.
So it's like even hard to get up in the morning for some. I cannot adult today, I think, is the meme I've seen most common.
Yeah, it's very
um
relatable.
very, yeah, especially for screenwriters. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's like Stephen Pressfield says, it's a war of art.
Yeah.
Getting past yourself on that kind of thing. And early writers, when they get started, they have a challenge with that too, right? So how did
Mhm.
you get started writing?
I actually have a couple stories that go back to my youth with how I got started writing. The very first uh, adventure I took, I was 13 years old, and I was watching, I don't even remember what the movie was. I was watching a movie with my mom on HBO, and she fell asleep on the couch, and the movie ended. And the next movie that came on was Halloween 2. And it started out Mr. Sandman, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. This is catchy. Let's see what's going on with this. And she slept through the whole thing, and I watched the whole thing, and it scared the crap out of me. But it also inspired me. Like, I never saw anything that, I mean, it was twisted, but it was also, I don't know, it like spoke to me in a way like just creatively. Like, I thought, this was a Halloween movie, and this, you got this masked serial killer. Instantly I thought of, well, what if I could write like a Christmas horror movie? What would I call it? And I started thinking, oh, it was a 12 Days of Christmas. And so I started writing this horror book about this serial killer. And when I finished it, I showed it to my mom, and she was terrified. And she took me to the priest, and he said, he said, don't discourage her writing, just try to encourage her to write different things. And I never thought like, oh, this awakened something in me. Like, I never had any bad feeling. I never thought, oh, I'm, the horror has spoken to me. It was just something about the creativity of that movie, the mystery. Like, this is a part two I saw. What happened the first time? What's going to happen next? Because obviously it didn't end. I mean, there was just so much that drew me into it. I wanted to see if I could write something like it. Um, and so then later, when I had kind of changed gears, and I wanted to be an actress. When
Hmm.
I went to high school, I was 14, and I enrolled in theater, and I was pursuing that with a hard passion. And at the end of the year, so we would, of course, we would write skits, for the class, and we would perform in them. At the end of the year, my teacher gave out Academy Awards to all of us. And I was so excited. Like, I was going to get Best Actress, and I was going to show my mom. And then, she was going to help me get into acting class or whatever. And I got Best Writer. And it like kind of gutted me, because I was like, no, I'm here to be an actress, and that's my dream. And I don't know, kind of reawakened the writing bug in me. And I thought, I am a pretty damn good writer. What else can I get into? And so I just started writing little short stories from there. So the passion hit me pretty early.
you know we share that commonly. I was in the same boat. I mean, I used to, when I was first trying to fancy myself as a writer, I would take 200 pages of college ruled notebook paper, write on both sides, take 100 sheets. And I thought 200 pages made a novel, right?
Right.
And that was before I understood anything about outlining or
Hmm.
um, just conjugating sentences probably in many ways. And I was 14. And so, yeah. And that was after years of just, imagining different things. When I was a kid, I wished I'd had access to a video camera as a kid, and I didn't. Uh,
Mm,
so, so
yeah.
so if I came up with ideas for a movie, I drew them as movie posters first, thumbnail sketches. Sometimes the drawings were pretty bad, but I was pretty
Mm,
good at writing the credits down pretty heavily,
yeah.
and narcissistically so, if I'm if I'm being honest. So, when you were first writing those forays, you said they were short stories, and when did you write your first screenplay?
I wrote my first I wrote my first screenplay. Um, I started like hardcore writing my, toward an idea. Like I would stop and start different ideas that I had, but then I had this one idea when I was 17, and it was going to change the world. It was going to move everybody and just bring everybody to tears. And it took me like 4 years to write it. I thought it was so good. Um, but yeah, it's probably the worst thing I've ever written when I look back on it now.
Mm.
But it was a springboard. It still fed my passion. I'm I I love that I did it. I would not ever show it to anybody, but I love doing it.
Well, and that's the part of it that I think you have to love this stuff to really do it, because otherwise, are there better ways to spend your time? I'm not sure, but how do you keep your motivation going? Especially now that you're an active and busy professional in the craft, um, and how do you continue opening doors? So I guess that's a two-part question: the motivation, and continuing to open doors.
Well, so I had a long period in my life where I kind of walked away from it. As much as it was my passion, it pains me to say that I left it for a while. I never really had a lot of support, um, from family, or, friends would be like, yeah, that's cool. But, I didn't have, I wasn't living in Los Angeles, and I was, I could make a lot of excuses as to why I didn't make the connections that I probably could have made. But, I ended up um, meeting someone, and we got married, and then we had kids, and my priorities just kind of shifted. And I decided for some reason that, I guess this isn't for me. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I got to work on getting a good job. And I shut the door on it. And so just recently, I like, well, that marriage, it didn't last. But I had entered into another long-term relationship. And again, just with this person, I was completely focused. I gave him all my attention, all my time, all my energy. And then that came to an end. And that was right before COVID. And part of my recovery was focusing on me. Um, I let my dream go a long time ago. Um, and it was time to come back. I mean, I'm glad that it never really died. It was all a little burning ember deep inside all this time. Because once I exposed that to oxygen, it lit up, and that's pretty much the only thing I've been pursuing the last couple of years. And so I guess, long story short, that's how I keep my motivation going, because I walked away from it before, and it was such a big part of who I am. I will never do that again. I know what it's like to fail, and now I want to know what it's like to succeed.
Now that's a hell of a rally cry. Every screenwriter I think could get behind that. Um, and so to continue opening those doors, how did you start getting people to notice your work?
So I got some tips from a screenwriting class that I was taking, and it was, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to get in trouble, like with them, like with, I don't know how much of this is like, um, I can't even think of the word. I hate it. You're a writer and you can't think of the word.
Right.
But so basically it was just kind of like it's knock on the doors. Don't limit yourself to just the one thing. Oh, I'm sending query letters, I haven't heard back. There's so many different paths. And so one thing, I don't think that this is a big secret. I think that IMDb is there for a reason and people's names are there for a reason. And so I don't think I'm giving away any special secret by saying, I went to IMDb and I just looked for movies that were like screenplays that I write. And if I was looking for a particular attention on an animation, then I was seeking out animation producers and I would just send them query letters. Um, and a lot of times you don't get any response. Sometimes there's no contact information available, but you move on. You don't get hung up on the door that doesn't open. You continue looking for the door that does open.
Speaking of opening doors, I'm going to go through a brief resume with you
Hmm.
about you. You've had success in a
Oh,
variety of contests,
yes.
and you're a winner of the 4 Theater Best Animation 2021, finalist of the 2021 LA International Screenplay Awards, semifinalist at the Austin 2021 Read My Screenplay genre, semifinalist 2021 at Script to Comic Contest. So first off, congratulations.
Thank you.
I myself have been turned off of animation, although I thought I had a killer animated short in my head for years, because writing for animation, that's not necessarily how the racket works. As far as what I've been told, it's like you have to start out. If you want to get into animation, you basically have to do, go the directing route for that, from what I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean it's necessarily true, because as to the point you made earlier, there are many paths. But getting back to the point about contests, what have you learned about the contest process in your experience? And do you have any tricks you can share?
I've learned that you should rush too quickly to get into a contest. Don't enter your screenplay if it's not ready. And if you think it's ready, put it aside and come back to it. That contest is going to come back around. They're not going anywhere. There's going to be a million of them. Get feedback from friends, co-writers. I mean co-writers, but like writer friends. Get feedback from people that are trying to do what you're trying to do. Like Coverfly has a service where you can get peer feedback. And so, if you get, it's one thing to get feedback from your friends, but it's another thing to get feedback from another screenwriter. I I made the mistake. It was a mistake that taught me something. So it did have its benefit, but I made the mistake of paying for feedback with competitions,
Mm.
and I wouldn't really recommend that. I mean, I think that I don't turn it down when it comes with a competition. I know like We Screenplay does free feedback. I'll be happy to hear what they have to say, but I think that if you're not in a place where you're comfortable when with your own work, if you're in a place where you're still feedback dependent, you're probably not ready to enter a competition. And I'm still learning myself. I mean, I've had a couple wins. I did win for my animation in the feedback animation contest, but it's very competitive, and so I'm in my learning process myself. I mean, it just if I had some tips, I would say don't waste your money on feedback. Get it from alternative sources. Look for discount codes. It can get expensive and be genre specific. I would say that was another mistake I made early on was I would enter this screenplay so good I'm gonna enter it everywhere. Um, and I would enter it in like my animation. Let's just say I would enter that in a contest that generally favored dramatic screenplays. So there's kind of sometimes there's unless it's like out of the park spectacular, there's kind of some contests I feel like it's just better to stay away from. Just stick to the genre specific contests.
That's a very good point. And one of the interesting things, and let me see if you agree. And I'm sure you even have one, but you'll have to tell me and confirm this. But I think it's better to grow a tribe of people who try to do what you do, like you mentioned this earlier. But have a tribe of fellow screenwriters. That's why we've heard all this time about screenwriting online groups, forming writers groups where you can share ideas and get that feedback and not have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always felt a little bit like, there are some contests like the Save the Cat contest. You can get, feedback as just part of your prize, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
for entering. And I think there's some benefit to that because some contests don't lead anywhere, but just, you get your top prize maybe, and that's it. And then for those that don't, you get feedback. So you still learn something and get something either way. You paid for the
Right.
feedback, but the
Right.
fees are usually small enough that where, in the case of Save the Cat, I think they're still inexpensive. You have the benefit
Mm-hmm.
of getting that feedback as part of that, but I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to, target a contest for that reason alone.
Right. Yes, that exactly. The contests are expensive anyway, and if you're looking to enter a contest for the feedback, you can get feedback in a cheaper way.
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway right there. I mean, especially just, talk to other screenwriters trying to break in, and I mean, just, and the ones that, aren't trying to use it as a get rich quick scheme. That's the one thing I've
Mhm.
I've never been a fan of, but
I think Twitter is also has been beneficial to me. A screenwriting Twitter is a community, and early on, I had seen people put out there, I'm looking for readers willing to exchange. It's so there's lots of ways to get free and valuable notes. And I agree with what you're saying as far as the writers group. When I was in the class that I was telling you about, there's two people that I gravitated towards. And it's weird because we kind of gravitated toward each other. And it was just a strictly online class, and there was no live communication. It was all just kind of through this, through a format, like forum. We were in a forum, and we just all kind of gravitated toward each other. And now we're in a writers group. Every other Saturday we meet and we talk, we write, we submit pages, we give feedback. It's very valuable. I think that's definitely, if you can get to be a part of a writers group, you should do it.
yeah, just if for no other reason to hold you accountable to deliver pages on a regular basis, some sort of
Yes.
cadence, because
Yes.
because the biggest challenge to any screenwriter, I think, is discipline and having that discipline. Having said that, you clearly had the discipline, and you're really, really busy right now. You're putting together. Let's take it to like further in the future for a screenwriter, not so much for the person starting out, but the one that has at least a few things under their belt.
Mm-hmm.
And now let's say you get into the mode where you can actually put together a pitch deck. Explain for our listening and learning audience what a pitch deck is, and is it a current and common activity in the industry right now?
I'm learning that it's requested a lot more than I originally thought. I was under the impression always that you just should have a good query to pique the interest, have a synopsis, maybe a one page, definitely have your script. Um, but the question of a pitch deck comes up more often than not. And to put it in the simplest terms, it's kind of like maybe 10 slides, give or take. I would say 10 slides at least, like a PowerPoint. And you're just doing it's kind of like if you were to put your query letter in a slide presentation. Um, it's a visual guide to help bring potential interested parties deeper into your idea.
So if it's like a PowerPoint with your story in it, how do you put that together? Do you just go find stock photography or images that marry well with what your story is and put that in there? How does
Honestly,
one put
like
together?
I'm not trying to sell anything, but I use Canva. So I think that Canva is more user friendly for putting something together. If you didn't have something like that, it could still be done on a PowerPoint. But yes, to answer your question, you search for the images that you think best capture your character and the emotion of what you're trying to convey on that particular slide. Um, put down just, nothing like lengthy um, uh, prose about what the slide is trying to say, just something to the point that it's like your query letter. You got to hit those marks, and it's just your visual query. Hit those marks, get those images down. Event from what I understand is, if the producer's interested, then they'll make their own pitch deck. But at least from a writing point, and something visual helps.
That just tells me that's an awful lot like it's an axiom that business people, there's a lot of people that say, I'm a visual person, so they're
Mhm.
not auditory. They don't want to have it. If you tell it to them, they got to picture stuff in their mind, which is interesting because that's our craft. We describe to
Right.
create image, right? So
Right. For
yeah,
me, like, I'm not an artist. I mean, I'm an artist, but I'm not an animator. I can't draw anything. I can give you some stick figures, but, as far as like creating the film and the picture, that's the director, but, there's a demand for it. So you gotta put it together.
right.
Gotta make it happen.
Right. Got to make that dollar, right? So, um, are the pitch decks that you're putting together based on the scripts that have won contests, your scripts that have won contests, or are they other scripts that you've been developing?
Um, yes, all of the above.
There you go.
So I have a pitch deck for the horror that I wrote. I have a pitch deck for my animation. I'm currently working on a pitch deck for another spec I'm writing. And then at the same time I have a pilot that I'm working on with two of my writer friends from my writing class. And so we're working on the pitch deck for that, as a group.
Wow.
So, and once you get the hang of it, like it's really fun and easy.
Well, see, I would get behind that anyway, just because that's the filmmaker in me wanting to like craft the image on a photographic level or something like that, as well as perhaps even sonically. But Um, okay, so you mentioned a horror script. This one's for Denise. I have to ask her on your behalf.
Okay.
She really wants to know if your mom took you to church after writing that horror script because she already has the Halloween, 2 experience and you're going to your priest over this. So now that you've written a horror script, does mom know and does your church know?
So I was enrolled in a Catholic school when I wrote my first horror story. Um, I Yeah, she does know that I wrote a horror recently. I'm not a churchgoer in my adult life, but she knows, and she hasn't requested to look at it.
Fair point. But the good news about that is since you've been, brought up in the Catholic faith, you have a rich culture and history to draw upon for horror. A lot of horror scripts are based in some sort of um,
Mm.
lexicon of faith, if you will.
Yes, and actually, I have a lot of experience with different religions. I was when I was a child, I was raised as a Catholic, and then as I went into high school, I went into it's the Christian religion, but not now I can't even think of the word. I want to say Pentecostal, but it's not that. Just like like a non-Catholic Christian. And then after that, I was with my dad, and he introduced me as Jehovah's Witness. There was a time in my teenage years when I was exploring Mormonism. So I have a lot of knowledge about lots of religions. I guess they're all based in Christianity, though. So
That's interesting. At least you've had
I don't
the
know how much variety that is when it's just a different branch of the same tree.
I suppose, but that gives you a basis to look at even, other religions.
Mhm. And now
And
I'm nothing.
well, and some of the strongest deeply held myths we have, if you want to go Joseph Campbell on anything for a second, definitely align themselves with the variations on the different faiths of the world. I think that's fair to say. But since it sounds like our religion is cinema here, so
Yes. I'm
which
a
I think it
devout
right. I mean,
practitioner.
right. The movie theaters are church and
Yes.
things like that. Um, so tell me about your animation script. Can you speak to a little bit of what that's about and how you approached it?
Yes. So I was looking for, before the message came in, I was looking for just kind of another, I know the old tried and true body switch movie. I was looking for kind of a twist on that, like what hasn't been done. And it made me think of originally, I kind of started out with this idea of, let's say that an alien family comes to Earth for their family vacation, and maybe they're at the Grand Canyon, and they have, of course, the power of mimicry because they have to fit in. So their little baby girl mimics an Earthling baby, and somehow they get switched, and now the alien parents are heading back home with the Earthling child, and the alien child is now heading back home with the Earthling parents. So that's kind of how my action started, and it evolved into something much, um, something deeper, more personal. Yeah, it didn't have many legs with the way it originally started, but it was a good springboard for where it ended up.
And where did it end up?
So it's about, the underlying message is about bullying and racism. The teenage alien wants to escape her planet because she's bullied incessantly. So she takes advantage of her family vacation to Earth to switch places with an Earthling girl who is also looking to escape her own troubles, which later we find out it's she's escaping her world of not being able to fit in because of intolerance and judgment. So these girls switch places, and meanwhile, while the alien is on Earth, she's being hunted by Area 51 types. The men in black are coming to get her.
Mm.
So she has to find a way to save herself, and hopefully her parents will come back in time, but what if they don't?
Very much, drawing from Prince and Pauper
Mm-hmm.
archetypes as far as mythos go, and it's a really interesting angle to go from teenager anxiety and seeing how the grass is greener, and then
Mm-hmm.
finding out how much you really have to lose over that, and pairing in the idea of intolerance, like capturing something we don't know because we want to understand it, as
Right.
opposed to just trying to understand it in a different way. It just sounds so cool. I would spend good money to go see that movie, Jay. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm ready to hunker down cash for that.
Thank you. And actually, the main focus is just like you say, the grass is always greener, but then once you get there, it's not. It's about, like, parents understanding their kids. They realize that even in space, these girls have a lot more in common than they expected. Um, the Relia, the alien, she's comes to Earth, and she's got her own. Now she's facing galactic bullies. Sophie, the girl, she goes to space to escape people that don't accept her, and now everyone around her is not like her at all. So it's just, it's I think at the end, the message is, core confidence and self-respect and love. It's not about necessarily, it's not about like race. It's about being comfortable with who you are and moving forward no matter who's trying to hold you back.
Beautiful message. And that's the theme of our particular episode this time out. Message. That's a
Yeah.
great message in there. I mean, if you can put an idea or two in there. Idea. Did I just say idea? Wow.
I didn't hear it the first time, but
Now that I'm over exaggerating it, and clearly I'm trying to make it a thing. So okay, so that from going from the idea of your own mythos, for a second, another one. This one is again for Denise, and for her benefit and for mine, because I am actually a fan of the wizarding world. I read that you want to write a story about Professor Snape. What is it about his character that is so inspiring to you to write that kind of story? And what would that story look like?
Professor Snape, he caught my attention right away. I saw the first movie before I read any of the books. After I saw the first movie, I just like delved into all the books that were available at the time. But I felt like I got him. Like I understood, like I knew instantly like that he's not the bad guy. And I don't know, like, if I knew the obvious, like I said, I hadn't read the books at the time, but he's just shrouded in mystery and coolness and there's just so many layers to him. And so, I just knew there was so much more to his story. And so I just started thinking, what else? What else about him? What else about him? And I know that, J.K. Rowling, she revealed a lot about his past, but it just got me thinking, like, what if there was this side story, about Snape way before Harry exists, way before his parents attend the school? What about Snape? And it just, I would be interested in exploring that if I had any way to get those rights to the IP to write that story. I would love to do that.
I'd love to see that. I know it's very tricky. A lot of people I know in the various screenwriting partnerships that I've seen, or more to the point, Denise and I both graduated from the same school with a master's of fine arts in professional screenwriting. And there were so many people I knew in there that wanted to, there was one particular individual who was very, very much in hot pursuit of writing the next Predator movie.
Mm-hmm.
And and God bless him for that, because chase down whatever your passions are. I don't think you should tell
Yeah.
anyone to hold anything back. But me, thinking practically from a career perspective, chasing someone else's IP is, first of all, you don't know if you're ever going to be able to get in that room to pitch that to anybody, which is really a challenge. I had another friend of mine active in the industry, how he tried to pitch for the Electra movie back in the day, and I mean, knowing how that movie turned out, and no offense to those filmmakers at all, but my friend would have been a better screenwriter for that one, knowing the material. But these things have a way of happening in a very, siloed kind of way. So I try not to worry about going after anyone's IP, at least not at this stage of my particular burgeoning pursuits.
Yeah.
Only
It's
because,
nothing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, please, please.
Well, I was gonna say it's nothing I explored enough to put anything on paper, but in my head it was just like there's just so much that could be explored with this character.
Fun to fantasize, isn't it?
Yes. And it actually led to it helped lead to a fantasy story that I had written as well. It was kind of took its inspiration from some video games.
Nice. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's always a great springboard. I mean, hell, I mean, there's the standard story of how, after celebrating their successes with in the late 70s, early 80s, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, there's a story going about how Spielberg said he wanted to make a James Bond movie, and George Lucas said he had something better than that, and that's how Raiders was born.
Mm.
So, which is killer. I mean, so again,
Yeah.
if I at all come across like, no one should take a character from anywhere and any IP and not pursue it, that's total bullshit, because anything can come from anywhere.
Mhm.
My own,
Totally. Yeah.
it's just my opinion. I'd rather start differently than that, because I don't want to set myself up for my own disappointment when I can't write the next great, Batman movie.
Right.
So, but as given how they're rebooted so many times, it's like, hope springs eternal. Just saying,
You never know.
right? Although, but it's interesting you went to Snape, because I mean I've been trying to work on my Alan Rickman impression for years, to try
Mm.
to get it. Mr. Potter, I could talk about potions all day, but I'm afraid work must intrude. Sorry, I went to Die Hard with that. Snape became Hans Gruber really all too quick.
Well,
Just
that was pretty good.
thank you, thank
I
you.
kind of like it gave me a little chill.
Yeah. Oh man, I take that as a complete compliment. Thank you so much. And now I've got to lock it in and come back to Earth and talk about screenwriting, of course. And I mentioned earlier that Denise and I have Masters of Fine Arts degrees.
Mhm.
We noticed that you have an MBA. Do you
Yes.
think that set you up for success on the business side of writing? And how did that influence just approaching the business part of the industry?
I'd like to say that it's helped, but I don't know that it has yet. I got my MBA as a part of trying to, advance myself in the non-screenwriting world, and it's helped me in that aspect. But I haven't I haven't really dealt a lot with the business side of screenwriting. I have learned, I guess, how to market myself. So in that regard, I could reap some benefits from it, I think. But overall, yeah, if I could do it again, it wouldn't have been an MBA.
That's interesting, because there are people who have mentioned that any degree is
Mm,
not a substantial place to start from as far as the motion picture industry is concerned. I don't know if I necessarily agree. I mean, there's plenty of people who argue just come out here and we'll put you to work, and
mm,
well, that depends. I mean, you still have to have a focus, and I know what my degree means to me and
mm,
why I pursued it, and the objectives that I wanted to meet, I met.
right.
So that, and honestly, one of those objectives was to get better at the craft of screenwriting and be able to, speak intelligently about it. And yet,
Mm.
I go to film festivals where I meet professionals, and I swear that just that part of my brain doesn't function as well as it should. Hence
I
why,
understand.
hence why I do this podcast, so I can talk to professionals like you and maybe get a little bit better about it. Hopefully. Denise just runs circles
Uh-oh,
around me on
that's why
that.
I'm talking to you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Then, we'll grow together. The whole purpose of the show. Absolutely. So, all right. Tell me, what are you working on right now? I think you mentioned a TV pilot earlier.
Right. So yes, so some co-writers and I have completed the pilot for actual IP for a best-selling author. So there's a series, a book series that he put together. Actually, several series, but we picked one series, and we've obtained the rights, and we are trying to make like a streaming series out of it. So we finished that pilot. We're working on the pitch deck. I'm also currently working on a contained thriller.
Mm,
Yes. So yeah, I'm just always trying to keep it going. It's not the jobs that's paying the wages at this time, but
right.
until then, I just still keep going.
I've got one more question that
Yeah.
Denise wanted me to ask, and I'm kind of curious too, because I am an sometimes unabashed, but because of social anxiety, fairly awkward fanboy. Which means I'm definitely always going to be have I'm always going to have a penchant for movies like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness as much the Batman or anything else DC Marvel. I don't
Mhm.
care. I'm a sucker for a good superhero movie. And so Denise asked me to ask you. She wants to know what happened with the superhero buddy drama that you were working on.
So with that one, I might have an actor attached to it. I'm not at the point, unfortunately, where I can put names on the podcast,
Oh, that's
but
fine. That's fine.
I've been in talks with an actor for a couple of weeks, and he loves it. He loves I've got him in mind for the villain. He loves the role, and so he's speaking with some people that he knows, and he said in June he will be getting back to me. So hopefully there'll be some good news and we can take that a few steps further.
Well, you know what? That's cool. Though one of the things Denise and I talk about is we want to, go back to some of our past guests
Mm-hmm.
and see how they're doing. Do a where are they now kind of moment, but do it a lot sooner than like, how the where are they now kind of things work. It's like 10, 20 years later. No, we want to see what happens, a few months later and see what happens. Something tells me we're going to be hearing good things about this.
I feel like that also. So I'd love to check in.
And we'd be happy to have you back. So just to mention a few places where people can find you, do you want to speak to your profile on Script Revolution or?
I do have a profile on Script Revolution, also the ISA. I'm on IMDb. So far, there's just awards up there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes, and Coverfly. I'm on Coverfly. LinkedIn. LinkedIn also. LinkedIn's a good place to make connections. So I would suggest for writers to get on LinkedIn and make connections with other writers and producers. That's a good way to reach out as well.
That's good advice because there's very few people that have spoken to whether or not LinkedIn is of any value for the motion picture industry outside of roles that are specific to entertainment company jobs,
Mhm.
internships, mostly on the side of assisting producers and assisting staff, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I mean, it's a good place to. You're not going to hook up with Spielberg,
oh
there,
yeah,
but it's a good place to meet independent people. Drop a quick note, see what they're looking for, drop a little query, ask if you can send them something. It's a good place to post your wins, whenever I need to be more active, but whenever I do have a win, I try to post it on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You never know who's watching. So, it's how I met. I'm actually in early talks with a producer about optioning my animation. I
nice.
um, I was gonna say I met him on LinkedIn, but I didn't.
Oh,
But the actor that's interested in my buddy comedy, Super Zeros, I met him on LinkedIn. Um, let's see, Virtual Pitch Fest is also I think it's a good um, site for writers to go to connect with managers or producers. There's more than one door to knock on.
brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Absolutely. So we can find you on scriptrevolution.com and
Yes,
IMDb.
Twitter, IMDb.
And I'm going to probably connect with you on LinkedIn because I'm active on there myself. But
Okay.
also, so is Telling the Show. We're available on. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Or if our listeners want to email us, and we'd love for people to send in, all their questions or ideas for. We were trying to get people to do log lines because we have this great thing we call Logline Thunderdome. Two
Yes,
log lines
I've heard
enter.
it.
You've heard? Oh, you've seen it. Okay, so
Yes.
you know that Denise has been clobbering me with them. I only won one,
Ah,
so I swear I have better ideas than that. It's just log lines are so challenging. But if anyone has any log lines they want to see, go into the Thunderdome and duke it out. They can email us at tellingtheshow@gmail.com. Now, Denise, we usually close our show with departing words of wisdom. And if you don't happen to have any, we do, but wanted to check with you first, see what you have, if you have any.
um, on the spot words of wisdom.
No pressure.
Don't stop writing.
Stop writing.
No, I said don't.
Don't
Don't
stop. I'm like,
stop writing.
wow. Don't stop writing. That's always a good one. I
Stop
like.
writing. Leave it for me. No,
Right.
no. The words of wisdom are don't stop writing.
Oh man, I've got a great one from Raymond Chandler that I think is appropriate to the theme of message that we've been talking about this evening. The challenge of screenwriting. This is Raymond Chandler. Quote: "The challenge of screenwriting is to say much in little, and then take half of that little out and still preserve an effect of leisure and natural movement." Unquote. Very profound. But this guy wrote like some of the greatest detective mysteries, known to man. So he had to be a study in human behavior already, which if we're crafting messages to be advocates of people, it's like we have to study people to do it, right?
Yes. Yes. That's a word of wisdom to savor, like a Werther's.
I love that. Werther's, dude. Savoring quotes like savoring Werther's. Copyright that stuff and put it on a t-shirt, Jay. Come on. That's what you got to do. That's what it's about. IP. You gotta have IP. I don't know if you can, copyright considering. I mean, maybe Werther's will give us a sponsorship out of this. We'll get little candies with, screenwriting, on the wrapper or something like that.
It's little clapboards.
Right. And maybe like Gene Hackman says, as Lex Luthor in Superman the movie, we'll unwrap it and unlock the secrets of the universe.
Oh.
Yeah.
Something.
I went deep.
You did.
I did a deep cut there, and most of our listeners are going to be like, get him off the mic now. And to that end, I think we can close our show amicably. I've had a great time chatting with you, Jay, and I hope you'll come back and visit us again. Let us know how you're doing with everything that's coming up. It sounds like there's a lot that's coming up roses right now for you.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. I had a lot of fun talking with you.
Well, thank you very much. We try to make it as
I missed that Denise wasn't here, though.
Oh, trust me, she's going to be back, and she is going to be like ready to take on the world. And if I happen to be on that particular episode, I swear I will probably witness amazement to be astounded.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm heaping praise on her because I think I owe her a few anyway. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Jay, for joining us this evening. And thank you to all our listeners. Again, you can find us at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Just search for Telling the Show, or email us if you prefer to go old school interwebs on us, and email us at tellingtheshow@gmail.com. We'll see you again very soon, folks. And like Jay told us earlier this evening, don't stop writing. Y'all take care. Have a good evening.